Oh, I'm sure what most of you are here to listen to today is Drew Haines from Middletown, Maryland. Drew is a three-time National Corn Yield Contest winner. The National Corn Yield Contest is administered by the National Corn Growers Association to recognize farmers nationwide who achieve the highest yield in their respective states and nationally. Drew has been pushing the limits of yield right here in Maryland. So please join me in welcoming Drew to the program. Hey Drew, how are ya?
Good, you?
Good, good. So to start out, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and your operation before we start talking about the corn yield contest.
Well, my name is Drew Haines. I live here in Middletown, Maryland. We farm about 600 acres. I farm with my brother Dale and my oldest son Dustin. We grow about 260 acres of corn, about 180 acres of beans, and the rest is hay. You're looking here out over the Middletown Valley. I thought this would be a good place to kind of do it. You can kind of see the terrain we have here and just how pretty it is here in the valley. Also how dry we are.
I was gonna say, it looks like you might be getting a little bit more rain than we are, but I'm sorry that it's dry out there.
Yeah.
So how did you find out about the National Corn Yield Contest, and do you remember when you started entering the contest?
Yeah, so I guess we started building our soil and stuff probably 10 years ago, and our yield started to increase. And our DSM at the time, he'd seen how our yields were coming up, and he was like, "Hey Drew, you ought to get into this yield contest thing." And they actually took me to the Commodity Classic, so I got to go and experience that and see some of these big winners. So when we went, it was to Arizona. I think it was it would have been like in January or February of 2015. But I actually got to go, and I'm not a golfer by any means, but they left me play golf, and I got to play golf with Dave Hula and Randy Dowdy and them guys, and got to talk to them and experience that whole thing. And when we got back, I told him, I said, well, let's get this thing started, because it's like a whole network of people trying to help you better your yields. It's not just to try to win a contest, it's to better your production on your farm. I look at it as a goal to better what I'm doing. It makes me feel good just to better myself. I try to beat myself every year, not someone else. So the first placement on the national level was in 2017. I got second place in 2017 and 18. And I mean, it's I don't know. It's just an experience you've never can imagine, I guess. They take you out there and they treat you. It's like going to a day spa almost. Which I've never been to a day spa, but I mean, they feed you, they put you up, and they're interviewing you and all kinds of stuff and asking you questions. They make you feel like you really achieve something, which you do, but it makes you feel real good. I'll tell you that.
That's great. So what drives you to really push for higher yields, and when you've done that, what has been your biggest success and your biggest failure in pursuing higher corn yields?
Well, like the driving force is to see what this corn will do. So when I first got started in doing this, I learned what the corn's potential is, and you find out what the corn's potential is before it even pollinates. When that has that embryonic ear on there, and you count how many spots are on there that can possibly pollinate, that's what your potential is. The goal is to get every one of them to pollinate, and of course we can't control that. The weather controls that. But over the past couple of years, I've learned different things to try to do in order to get them to pollinate, and to way to get more spots on that or more kernels on there to pollinate. So what drives me is I want to better myself. I want to make that corn have more sites on there to pollinate. I want to make it yield higher. This year, we had the best set going into pollination that I've ever had. I had the most sites on a ear of corn that I've ever had in the past 10 years. And it turned dry on us. I don't know what this is going to affect us. I mean, we've been very blessed the last 8 years that we've had rain, and timely rains. We went a 3-week period on 0.2 of an inch of rain. So I don't know what that's going to do. So this is a whole new ball game for us for seeing what that's going to experience. But one of the greatest successes I've had is I'm not a chemist or a college graduate or anything like that, but I learned to play with some of these things foliarly. I put together a mix, and I've been able to trick the plant to be able to put on test weight. And in doing that, we've seen increases up to 40 bushel just in test weight. Last year, when we had that 422 bushel, we had a test weight of around 66 pounds. So when you're talking 10 extra pounds on a bushel, you get up over 300 bushel, and then you're tacking on 10 extra pounds. That's a lot of extra bushels. You don't even have to run through the combines, just in test weight. And so for me, that's kind of my greatest accomplishment, was learning how to do that. And now I'm able to help other guys to try to achieve that also. And that's more rewarding to me than doing it myself.
You didn't tell us your biggest failure. You have to tell us
the biggest failure
you tried that didn't work.
Okay, so the biggest failure. Which one? So the first year we did foliar. I put the mix together, and there's a couple guys that's probably listening that got some of these. I didn't mix it right. If you don't mix it right, it will turn to gel. So I mixed some of this stuff together, and I had the tote basically turn to powdered gel. I mean, it was slimy and that kind of stuff, but it turned to gel. And that was just inexperience on not knowing how to do it. So that was one failure. Another failure we figured out was driving through the corn after it's at B6. I'm a big proponent of flying stuff on, just not driving through the corn. And last year I had a field that was double-eared. Never had a field double-eared ever. And when we went to shell it for the contest, I couldn't pick out a pass to come back on that didn't have the tracks in. So there was no way we could get it where we didn't have a set of the tracks in. So we just wiped it out of the contest. We went ahead and harvested, left the track rows there. We harvested the in-between rows, went back and harvested the track rows, and it was 50 bushel decrease where the tracks were. And it was from rundown corn, compaction, and that kind of thing. So I learned my lesson there with that.
Yeah, that's a great tip. So has there been anything that has really surprised you? So maybe something that one of the other corn yield contest winners told you to try and you were like, oh, that's not going to work, but you tried it and it really did work.
Yeah. First year we did this, I had met Dave Hooley even before I went to the first commodity classic. And so he kind of talked to me on the phone one day and was kind of telling me everything I should do and shouldn't do and this, that, and the other. So I took his advice and went out and we did it. We fertilized, hoping for 350 bushel. And I think the first year we did 303. And I got done. I'm like, what in the heck did I do wrong? We did all this and did all that. And I called him and he's like, we have a limiting factor somewhere. And I was like, well, we had rain, we fertilized, we did all this. He goes, no, you had a limiting factor somewhere and you got to find that. So his first thing was, he said, check your compaction. So we have a backhoe here, and we come out in the field and we dug down, and sure enough, 11 inches down, we had a compaction layer. And we ended up, we ripped the field, and the field right here behind us this is 8 years corn on corn. And since we ripped that, it has just gotten better and better and better. And he was right. It was a limiting factor. So we learned to look for that now. I mean, that was just a simple piece of advice.
Yeah, that's really interesting and really important to, think about all of the things that you're doing on the input side and doing everything right, but your limiting factor was just a really logistical, soil issue.
Yeah, just one simple little thing, that we didn't even think about. We thought, well, apply this. Well, we could apply everything we wanted under the sun, but if the roots couldn't get through to get the water, it wasn't going to work.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
So here in Maryland, something that we have that's different than the farmers in other states that are participating in the corn yield contest is regulatory nutrient management. So I always like to brag on our farmers that do place in the National Corn Yield Contest, because we're doing it with nutrient management plans and complying with our plans. So for the farmers that are watching, can you tell them a little bit about how you go about getting those higher yields or looking to achieve them with your nutrient management plan?
So when we first started going into this, we went to our extension agent at the time and told him that we were going to do like some test trials. And, I told him I was getting into the contest. And so he put us on like a waiver that we were going to do test trials. So it allowed us to raise those levels on the contest fields. Since then, I mean, we've raised the levels of the whole farm as far as our yields go. So like last year, our yield average on the entire farm was 312 bushel. That's helped us to raise what amount of nitrogen we're able to apply in order to, go along with our nutrient management plan. It is hard to increase yields following the nutrient management plan unless they give you that variance to allow you to do some testing on your farm in order to get those levels up. But if you're really serious about getting into the contest and you want to push, they will help you do that.
Great. No, that's a really good point. So for any of the farmers that are watching, you can work with your nutrient management planner and extension to get a research exemption for nutrient management plan for specific fields for things that you're trying to do.
That's right.
Awesome. Thanks, Drew. One question I did have, and if anybody else has questions, please enter them into the chat box so that we can make sure that we put in. But from a quality and consistency standpoint, are you seeing consistent in your corn as you are pushing the limits for these higher yields?
Consistency in what part?
So are you seeing consistent quality in the corn? So you talked about improving things like test weight. Are you seeing consistency through the ears, or have there been any problems that have arisen when you're changing your applications?
No. So actually, like quality has increased. I was thinking, it's like 2 years ago, we actually took some and tested it as silage. I had a fella come in here. We took, I don't know what it was, took one row out in the middle of the field, and we did like what would be a replica of an acre, whether that was 10 stalks or 17 stalks, whatever it was. He run it through a grinder. I want to say like a twig grinder to make silage out of it. He sent it off for test, and it came back. It was actually higher in your starches and that kind of stuff. he said it was like phenomenal corn silage that people would want. The tonnage is what was impressive because of the population that we're planting. We're planting at 40,000 population, and it was coming back like at 45 tons to the acre. And then at the high quality, and then with the dry grain, we've had it sampled and tested with a higher starch value. So not only is the yield getting higher, the quality is getting better. And with the stuff that we're putting on foliarly, we're keeping the plants healthier and keeping them healthier longer. So the overall plant health is even better, and I'm able to cut back on the fungicides. So like the corn right there has a half a rate of fungicide on at pre-tassel, and if we go down here and look at it, there's no disease in it. And that's 8 years corn on corn. And that just amazes me. And no insecticide here for 5 years.
Wow.
At all.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
We do have a question that came in through the chat box. So Kayla Griffith is asking, Drew, do you find farmers from other areas of the country are looking to you now for information on practices such as nutrient management, cover crops, and other conservation practices?
Yeah, actually, I work with about 35 growers now, helping them do the same thing that I did to build the soil up here. I got people from Arkansas, Kansas, here on the Eastern Shore, down in the Carolinas. So yeah, and that's part of that network that I talked about, like from going to the Commodity Classic. People will come up to you and talk to you, and everybody's just, well, the farm community in itself is just a good group of people, and they talk to you, and we share information and that kind of stuff. But I just enjoy going to somebody else's farm and helping them and trying to teach them what I'm doing. I really enjoy it.
That's awesome. One other question is, do you think, or do you feel that pushing the limits of yield and therefore increasing your yield, has that helped your farm operation weather the uncertain economic times and the downturn in the commodity market?
Well, of course, prices have been good until this year. But the one thing, like I tell people this too. At one time, we farmed about 1,100 acres here, and now we only farm 600. But we're getting more corn now off of 250 or 60 acres than we did off of 500.
Wow.
And we don't have to beat ourselves to death to do it. Yes, there's more inputs to do that, but we don't have to farm near as many acres. And I was down in Louisville this year, and I gave a grower meeting talk there, and I was telling them about split applying fertilizer, to split it up more, not to apply everything up front. And I had a fella come up to me, and he says, well, I have to apply all my stuff in the fall. I just don't have time to do it in the spring. And I said to him, well, take 50 acres and do it in the spring and then split it up. And if that 50 acres does better than your 9,000 does, maybe you ought to reconsider how your whole system's working, and you could cut back and make more off of less. I mean, it's just an idea, but I don't know. That's my 2 cents anyway.
I think that that's really important, especially as we see the loss of agricultural land, the loss of prime and productive farmland to development. And then from an environmental standpoint, agriculture is being asked to reduce their footprint or produce more with less. I think that this is a good example of the fact that that's possible. So.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to give everybody one last chance to get any questions into the chat box. But with that, Drew, is there anything that you'd like to leave us with? Any closing comments or words of wisdom to our followers?
No, well, one thing I'm going to say is I want to thank my wife and children for putting up with my craziness. Because I know, like, this time of the year, it's all corn, all corn, all corn. And I just want to say thank you to them. Also want to say thank you to the people that support me and have followed me and, watch what I do. I classify myself as a corn nerd. I love to watch what corn does. When that certain DSM that took me out there, he and I used to go out and look at corn and plots and growing and stuff, and had a kind of a game where we could pick varieties without knowing what they were. It'd be 20 some varieties in there, and as they were growing, you could pick them out which variety it was just by the way it was growing. And I learned a lot from him. And this summer, the 18th of June, we lost our helicopter pilot. And I just wanted to give a shout out to him, Gene Critter. And
Yeah.
But that's all. That's all I want to say.
Yeah. No, so I think one of my favorite things about farmers is gratitude, right? And so I thank you for that, and gratitude to our farmers and farm families who stand behind them and know all of the important work that they do. So I appreciate your time so much, Drew, and hope you get some more rain, okay?
All right. Thank you.